I accidentally found out my dad was living a double life. Growing up, I thought my dad was the greatest man in the world. He worked hard, always made time for me, and never forgot a single birthday or special occasion. My parents had what seemed like the perfect marriage: date nights, inside jokes, stolen kisses in the kitchen. I used to tell my friends I wanted a love like theirs. I was so wrong. It all started a few weeks ago when my dad left his laptop open on the kitchen table. He had stepped out to take a call, and I wasn't trying to snoop. I swear I wasn't. But then, a message popped up. "Can't wait to see you tonight." At first, I laughed. My mom wasn't the type to send heart emojis, but maybe she was feeling romantic? Then another message appeared. "I miss you so much, baby. Counting the hours." My stomach twisted. My mom was at home, in the living room, watching TV. I told myself it was probably nothing. Maybe an old friend, a coworker, a misunderstanding. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So, before I could even think about what I was doing, I clicked on the message thread. And that's when my entire world fell apart. There were hundreds of messages, late-night texts, inside jokes, photos. My dad, smiling at some restaurant I'd never seen before, sitting across from a woman I didn't recognize. And it wasn't just one dinner. There were different dates, different outfits, different places. This wasn't some fling. This was a relationship. And then, as I scrolled further, I found something even worse. A video. My hands were shaking as I pressed play. It was my dad in a hotel room, holding a baby. His baby. A little boy, barely 2 years old, giggling as my dad kissed his forehead. In the background, the same woman from the photos was laughing, calling them over for dinner. My mind couldn't process it. My dad had another family, a second wife, a son. I sat there for what felt like hours, scrolling through the proof of his secret life. Bank transactions, hotel reservations, plane tickets, a house. Their house. He had been traveling for work all these years, but now I knew the truth. He wasn't just my dad. He was our dad. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding so hard I thought I was going to pass out. My mom was just down the hall. Should I tell her? Would she even believe me? I tried to act normal that night, but every time I looked at my dad, I felt sick. How could he sit there laughing with us after spending the weekend with them? How could he look my mom in the eyes and tell her he loved her? I barely slept that night. My mind was racing. Should I confront him? Should I tell my mom? Should I just pretend I never saw it? But I couldn't pretend. Not after what I had seen. For the next few days, I kept the secret to myself, hoping I'd wake up and it would all be a bad dream. But the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. My dad had spent years lying to us. He had stolen time from us. He had stolen my childhood. So, I decided to confront him. One night after dinner, I asked him if he could help me with something on his laptop. He looked confused, but agreed. I opened the messages and turned the screen toward him. His face went pale. He didn't even try to deny it. He just stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like he couldn't find the words. Finally, after what felt like forever, he whispered, "I was going to tell you one day." I lost it. I don't even remember everything I said, but I remember yelling. I remember my mom walking in, confused, then seeing the messages. And then I remember the look on her face, the way her whole body just collapsed. I had never seen her cry like that before. That night, my dad packed a bag and left. My mom barely spoke for days. And me? I don't know how to feel. I don't even know who he is anymore. But I do know one thing. My dad may have been our dad, but he's not my dad anymore. A few weeks passed, and my mom was still a shell of herself. She barely ate. She barely spoke. She would sit in the living room for hours, just staring at the TV without actually watching it. I tried to be strong for her, but I was breaking too. One day, I got a text. "Dad, I want to talk." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Me. About what?" "Dad. Everything." I didn't know what I wanted to hear, but I needed closure, so I agreed to meet him. We met at a coffee shop near my house. He looked different, tired, older. The first thing he said was, "I never meant to hurt you." I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask him how the hell he thought this wouldn't hurt me. But I stayed quiet. He told me he met the other woman 10 years ago. At first, it was just an affair. Then she got pregnant. He panicked. He didn't want to leave my mom, but he also didn't want to abandon his new child. So, he lived a double life. "I didn't know what else to do," he said. I laughed bitterly. "Maybe not cheat?" He had no answer for that. I asked him if he ever really loved us, if we were just his side family. He swore up and down that he did, that he still did, that we were his world. I told him it didn't feel that way. I asked him if Mom knew, if she ever suspected anything. He hesitated. And then, quietly, he said, "She's always known." That broke me more than anything. My mom knew. She had spent years pretending. For my sake, for her own. I didn't know, but it made me question everything. I left without saying another word. It's been months. My dad still texts me, but I don't respond. My mom finally filed for divorce. She's in therapy now, trying to rebuild her life. And me? I'm just trying to figure out what's real. Was my childhood a lie? Was my family ever real? I don't have answers yet. Maybe I never will. But I do know one thing. I'll never let someone do to me what my dad did to my mom. And I'll never, ever let myself become him.